Sarah Martinez had always been the invisible one. At 24, she worked as a maintenance technician at the Coronado Naval Base, her small frame often overlooked among the towering SEALs who dominated the training facilities. Every morning, she arrived before dawn to service the equipment, check the rifle ranges, and ensure everything was perfect for the elite warriors who would never notice her existence. The other maintenance staff called her Mouse, not out of cruelty, but because she moved through the base like a shadow, fixing problems before anyone knew they existed. She preferred it that way. Attention had never brought her anything good in her 24 years of life. Growing up in rural Montana with an alcoholic father and absent mother, Sarah had learned that survival meant staying quiet and staying hidden. What nobody knew was that Sarah had grown up with a rifle in her hands. Her grandfather, a Korean War veteran, had taught her to shoot when she was 8 years old. Shooting isn't about the gun, little bird, he would say, using his pet name for her. It's about breathing, patience, and seeing what others miss. By the time she was 16, Sarah could put 5 rounds through the same hole at 500 yards. By 18, she was hitting targets that experienced hunters missed by feet. But life had other plans. Her grandfather died when she was 19, leaving her with nothing but his old hunting rifle and a box of medals she barely understood. College wasn't an option with no money and no family support. The military seemed like a logical choice. But when the recruiter looked at her slight build and soft-spoken manner, he steered her toward maintenance roles rather than combat positions. "You seem like someone who pays attention to details," he had said, not knowing he was describing the exact quality that made her lethal with a rifle. There was Lieutenant Commander Jake "Hawk" Morrison, the base's top sniper instructor, whose ego was as large as his reputation. He strutted through the rifle range like he owned it, constantly reminding everyone that he held the base record for long-distance accuracy. Then, there was Petty Officer Mike Chun, young and eager, who tried twice as hard as everyone else but seemed to plateau at mediocre. And Chief Ramirez, the veteran who had seen too much combat and now drank too much coffee while yelling at trainees. But it was Colonel Patricia "Ice" Winters who commanded everyone's respect. At 45, she was one of the few women to reach such a high rank in the special operations community. She had earned her nickname not from coldness, but from her ability to remain calm under the most intense pressure. Sarah had watched her review training scores with the same intensity that others reserved for life-or-death situations. The morning that changed everything started like any other. Sarah was calibrating the electronic scoring system on Range 7 when she overheard a conversation that made her blood boil. Lieutenant Commander Morrison was talking to a group of new SEAL candidates, his voice carrying the confidence of someone who had never been challenged. "The thing about sniping," Morrison was saying, "is that it requires a certain type of person. You need physical strength to handle the recoil, mental toughness to make the kill shot, and natural instincts that can't be taught. That's why women struggle in these roles. It's not their fault. They just don't have the right combination of traits." Sarah's hands stilled on the equipment. She had heard variations of this speech before, but today it hit differently. Maybe it was because she had just found another box of her grandfather's things the night before, including a faded photograph of him teaching her to shoot. Maybe it was because she was tired of being invisible. Or maybe it was because she had spent 5 years watching men who couldn't hit targets that she could take down blindfolded. "I mean, look at our scores," Morrison continued. "The top 20 snipers on this base are all men. It's just biology." One of the candidates, barely out of boot camp, raised his hand. "Sir, what about that Army sniper, Sergeant Johnson? I heard she has over 40 confirmed kills." Morrison waved dismissively. "Exceptions prove the rule, son. And, besides, combat conditions are different from controlled range conditions. Any halfway decent shooter can hit a stationary target when there's no pressure." Sarah wanted to speak up, wanted to tell him about the elk she had taken at 800 yards in a Montana blizzard when she was 17, or about the countless hours she had spent practicing in conditions that would send most of these SEALs running for shelter. But she remained silent, her grandfather's voice echoing in her memory. "The loudest person in the room is usually trying to cover up what they don't know, little bird." The group moved on, and Sarah returned to her work, but the conversation gnawed at her throughout the day. That evening, she found herself at the base library, looking up shooting records and statistics. What she found surprised even her. The base's unbeatable record that Morrison bragged about was actually quite achievable, certainly within her capabilities. Over the next few weeks, Sarah began paying closer attention to the training sessions. She noticed things that others missed. The way Morrison's hand trembled slightly when he thought no one was looking, suggesting he was drinking more than he should. The way Chen consistently pulled his shots to the left because his breathing technique was wrong. The way even experienced snipers struggled with wind calculations that seemed intuitive to her. She also noticed Colonel Winters watching the training with increasing frustration. The woman had built a reputation on excellence, and, lately, the sniper program's results had been declining. Budget cuts meant fewer training rounds, and the pressure to produce qualified snipers quickly was showing in the graduation rates. One afternoon, Sarah was cleaning the optics on the range when Colonel Winters approached her workstation. It was the first time the colonel had spoken directly to her in the 5 years she had worked on base. "Martinez, isn't it?" the colonel asked, her voice carrying the authority that had earned her respect throughout the special operations community. "Yes, ma'am," Sarah replied, straightening up, but not quite meeting the colonel's eyes. "You've been here a while. You see everything that goes on at this range. What's your assessment of our sniper training program?" The question caught Sarah off guard. Officers didn't ask maintenance staff for tactical assessments. She could give a safe, generic answer and return to her invisible life, where she could tell the truth. "Honestly, ma'am," Sarah asked, finally, making eye contact. "I wouldn't have asked if I wanted anything else." Sarah took a breath. The fundamentals aren't being taught properly. Too much focus on equipment, not enough on basics like breathing and natural point of aim. The wind reading instruction is inadequate for real-world conditions. And she paused, wondering if she was about to end her career. And some of the instructors are teaching techniques that work on a flat range, but will get people killed in the field. Colonel Winters studied her for a long moment. "That's a pretty specific assessment for someone who maintains equipment. I grew up hunting in Montana, ma'am. My grandfather was a sniper in Korea. I've been around rifles my whole life. Have you ever considered putting in for sniper school yourself?" The question hung in the air between them. Sarah had considered it countless times, but the unofficial barriers seemed insurmountable. The physical requirements that seemed designed to exclude women, the cultural resistance, the assumption that someone like her couldn't handle the pressure. "I didn't think I'd be accepted, ma'am." Colonel Winters nodded slowly. "The military is changing, Martinez. But change requires people willing to prove what's possible. Think about it." As the colonel walked away, Sarah felt something shift inside her. For the first time in years, she began to imagine a different future, one where she wasn't invisible, where her skills mattered, where she could honor her grandfather's memory by becoming the sniper he had trained her to be. That night, Sarah drove to the public range outside town and paid for an hour of range time. She hadn't fired a rifle in months, but the familiar weight felt like coming home. She started at 100 yards, then moved back to 200, then 300. Each shot found its mark, the groups tightening as she remembered her grandfather's lessons. At 500 yards, shooting with borrowed equipment and cheap ammunition, Sarah put 5 rounds into a group that would have impressed anyone on the base. But she knew she could do better. She had always known she could do better. The drive back to base felt different. For the first time since her grandfather's death, Sarah felt like she had a purpose beyond just surviving. She thought about Colonel Winters' words, about the declining training scores, about Morrison's arrogant assumptions. Maybe it was time to stop being invisible. The next morning, Sarah arrived at work with a new resolve. She went through her usual routine, but now she was watching everything with different eyes. She was no longer just maintaining equipment. She was studying a program that she might soon be part of. She observed the training with the critical eye of someone who had spent years perfecting the same skills, noting every mistake and missed opportunity. During her lunch break, she walked to the base administration building and picked up the paperwork for sniper school application. The stack of forms seemed intimidating, but not as intimidating as the thought of spending the rest of her life wondering what might have been. As she sat in her small apartment that evening, filling out forms and writing essays about her qualifications, Sarah thought about her grandfather. She could almost hear his voice. "Being good isn't enough, little bird. You have to be willing to show people how good you are. And sometimes that means taking a risk." Sarah Martinez was tired of being invisible. It was time to show them what a quiet sniper could do. The laughter started the moment Sarah walked into the sniper school briefing room. 23 men in peak physical condition turned to look at the small woman carrying a worn canvas rifle case. The sound wasn't malicious, exactly, but it carried the weight of disbelief and dismissal that Sarah had heard her entire life. "Looks like we've got diversity training today," someone whispered from the back row, causing another ripple of chuckles. Lieutenant Commander Morrison stood at the front of the room, his surprise evident as he flipped through the roster. "Martinez, Sarah E.," he read aloud, his tone suggesting he was reading from a comedy script. "It says here you're coming from maintenance. Is there some kind of mistake?" "No mistake, sir," Sarah replied, taking a seat in the back row. Her voice was steady, but, inside, her heart hammered against her ribs. This was it, the moment she stepped out of the shadows and into a world that clearly didn't want her. The first week of sniper school was designed to break people. Physical training at 0500, followed by 8 hours of classroom instruction on ballistics, weather reading, and fieldcraft. Then, equipment maintenance, tactical exercises, and more physical training. By Friday, 3 candidates had dropped out, their bodies unable to handle the grueling pace. Sarah not only kept up, she excelled. While the other candidates struggled with complex wind calculations, she solved problems in her head that others needed calculators for. During equipment maintenance, she identified issues with rifles and optics that even Morrison had missed. In the classroom, her quiet questions revealed a depth of knowledge that made the instructors pause. But it was the physical challenges that surprised everyone the most. Years of maintenance work had given Sarah a wiry strength that didn't look impressive but proved remarkably durable. While larger men collapsed during long ruck marches, Sarah maintained her pace, her breathing steady and controlled. Her small size, initially seen as a disadvantage, allowed her to move through terrain silently and find shooting positions that others couldn't access. The first live-fire exercise was scheduled for Monday of the second week. It was a simple marksmanship test, 5 shots at 300 yards, using standard-issue rifles with basic optics. Most candidates would score between 40 and 45 points out of a possible 50. The top performers might hit 47 or 48. Sarah went last, after watching every other shooter. She had studied their techniques, their mistakes, their successes. She had noted the wind patterns, the way the morning sun affected visibility, the slight mechanical issues with rifle number 7 that caused it to shoot left. When her turn came, Sarah approached the firing line with the same quiet confidence she brought to equipment maintenance. She performed her pre-firing routine methodically, checking the rifle, adjusting the scope, finding her natural point of aim. The other candidates watched with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. The first shot broke clean, the sound echoing across the range. Through the spotting scope, the range safety officer saw the bullet hole appear in the exact center of the target. "Bullseye," he called out, his voice neutral but his eyebrows raised. The second shot followed the same path. Then, the third. By the fourth shot, the chatter among the candidates had died completely. Everyone was watching now, including Morrison, who had stopped pretending to review his notes. The fifth shot completed what would later be described as one of the most impressive displays of marksmanship in the school's history. 5 shots, 1 hole, dead center. A perfect score that was more than just mathematically perfect. It was artistically perfect. "Score that," Morrison said to the range officer, his voice tight. 50 out of 50, sir. All shots in the X-ring." The silence stretched for several seconds. Then, one of the candidates, a cocky SEAL named Rodriguez who had been among the loudest of the doubters, spoke up. "Lucky shots. Wind probably died." Sarah turned to look at him, her expression calm. "The wind has been steady at 8 miles per hour from the right for the last 15 minutes. It shifted twice during the exercise, and I adjusted for both changes. Would you like me to explain the corrections I made?" Rodriguez's face reddened, but he had no response. Neither did anyone else. Over the following days, Sarah continued to demolish expectations. The 500-yard exercise? Perfect score. The 800-yard challenge that typically eliminated half the remaining candidates? She not only passed, but set a new class record. When they moved to urban sniper scenarios, Sarah demonstrated an intuitive understanding of angles, concealment, and shot placement that impressed even the most experienced instructors. But it was during the stress fire exercise that Sarah truly separated herself from the pack. The scenario was designed to simulate combat conditions. Candidates had to navigate an obstacle course under time pressure, then engage multiple targets at varying distances while instructors shouted contradictory commands and set off simulated explosions nearby. Most candidates saw their accuracy drop by by 30 to 40% under these conditions. Sarah's accuracy improved. The chaos seemed to calm her, the stress sharpening her focus rather than degrading it. She moved through the course like she had trained on it for years, finding shooting positions that others missed and engaging targets with mechanical precision. "Where did you learn to shoot like that?" asked instructor Chief Ramirez after Sarah had completed another flawless exercise. The veteran sniper had stopped trying to hide his amazement. "My grandfather taught me," Sarah replied simply. "He said that if you're going to do something, you should do it right the first time." Word of Sarah's performance began to spread beyond the sniper school. Other instructors found excuses to observe her training sessions. Base personnel who had barely noticed her for 5 years were suddenly very interested in the maintenance technician who was rewriting the record books. Colonel Winters made her first official visit to the school during the 3rd week of training. She arrived without fanfare during a long-range exercise, positioning herself behind the spotting scopes to observe. Sarah was engaging targets at 1,000 yards, a distance that challenged even experienced military snipers. The wind was tricky that day, shifting patterns that had caused several candidates to miss their targets completely. Sarah studied the mirage through her scope, watched the grass movements at different distances, and made her calculations. Her first shot hit center mass on a target that others couldn't even see clearly. "Impressive," Colonel Winters said quietly to Chief Ramirez. "What's her background?" "Maintenance technician, ma'am. But she's got more natural ability than anyone I've trained in 20 years. She sees things that others miss, stays calm under pressure that would break experienced operators. And her technical knowledge of ballistics and weather effects is better than most of my instructors." The colonel nodded thoughtfully. "What does Morrison think of her?" Ramirez hesitated. "He's adjusting to the situation, ma'am." That was a diplomatic way of saying that Morrison was struggling with the reality that his assumptions about gender and shooting ability were being demolished daily by a quiet woman who outperformed his best male students. His ego, built on being the base's premier sniper, was taking a beating from someone he had previously dismissed as invisible. The tension came to a head during the final week of basic sniper training. The culminating exercise was a 72-hour field problem where candidates had to infiltrate to a shooting position, remain concealed while gathering intelligence, and then engage multiple targets at extended ranges. It was designed to test every skill they had learned, and historically, about 30% of candidates failed this final test. Sarah was paired with Rodriguez for the exercise, a deliberate choice by Morrison that everyone recognized as an attempt to set her up for failure. Rodriguez had made no secret of his belief that women didn't belong in combat roles, and his passive-aggressive behavior during team exercises had already caused problems. "Try to keep up," Rodriguez told Sarah as they prepared their gear. "This isn't a maintenance job. People's lives depend on us doing this right." Sarah didn't respond. She had learned long ago that actions spoke louder than words, and she planned to let her performance do her talking. The infiltration was the first challenge. Teams had to move 3 miles through difficult terrain without being detected by the opposing force. Rodriguez wanted to take the direct route, despite Sarah's concerns about open ground and predictable movement patterns. "I've done this before," Rodriguez insisted. "Follow my lead, and maybe we'll both pass." They were detected within the first mile. The opposing force, equipped with night vision and thermal imaging, spotted Rodriguez's chosen route exactly where Sarah had predicted they would. The exercise was over before it had really begun. "Your fault," Rodriguez hissed as they trudged back to the start point. "I told you to follow my lead." But the instructors had been monitoring their radio communications. Chief Ramirez pulled Rodriguez aside for a private conversation that left the man red-faced and subdued. When the exercise was reset the next day, Rodriguez was notably more cooperative. This time, Sarah planned the infiltration route. She chose a longer path that took advantage of dead ground and natural concealment, timing their movement to coincide with wind patterns that would mask their noise. They reached the objective undetected, established a hide position that was invisible from 5 feet away, and settled in for the observation phase. For 24 hours, they watched enemy positions and recorded intelligence. Sarah's attention to detail was remarkable. She noted guard rotations, communication patterns, and weaknesses in the security setup that others missed. When it came time to engage the targets, she had chosen primary and alternate shooting positions that gave them multiple options. The first target appeared at 650 yards, a challenging shot, but well within Sarah's capabilities. She made the shot cleanly, the target falling immediately. The second target, at 800 yards and partially concealed, required a more complex solution. Sarah studied the target through her scope, calculated the hold-off for wind and elevation, and sent the round exactly where it needed to go. By the time the exercise ended, Sarah and Rodriguez had successfully completed every aspect of the mission. More importantly, Sarah had demonstrated leadership skills and tactical thinking that impressed everyone who observed the exercise. The graduation ceremony was held on a Friday afternoon. Of the original 24 candidates, only 16 had made it through the program. Sarah finished second in the overall rankings, behind only a Delta Force operator who had previous sniper experience. As she stood on the podium receiving her sniper qualification badge, Sarah thought about her grandfather. He would have been proud, not just of her shooting skills, but of her courage in stepping forward when it would have been easier to stay invisible. Colonel Winters presented the badges personally, pausing when she reached Sarah. Outstanding performance, Martinez. I understand you're interested in the advanced sniper program. Yes, ma'am, Sarah replied. Good. Report to my office Monday morning. We have some things to discuss. As the ceremony ended and the candidates celebrated their achievement, Sarah noticed Morrison approaching. She braced herself for another confrontation, but his expression was different now, respectful, if not entirely comfortable. Martinez, he said, extending his hand. I owe you an apology. I made some assumptions that were incorrect. Sarah shook his hand, noting the sincerity in his voice. We all make mistakes, sir. The important thing is learning from them. Morrison nodded. I've been teaching snipers for 8 years, and I've never seen natural ability like yours. Whatever happens next, you've earned your place here. That evening, alone in her apartment, Sarah cleaned her grandfather's old hunting rifle, the same rifle that had started her journey. The worn stock and well-used barrel told the story of countless hunting trips and practice sessions, of patient instruction and hard-won skills passed from generation to generation. She thought about the journey that had brought her here, from invisible maintenance technician to qualified military sniper. But she also knew this was just the beginning. Colonel Winters had mentioned the advanced program, and Sarah could sense there was something more, an opportunity that would truly test everything she had learned. The quiet sniper was ready for whatever came next. The laughter had stopped, replaced by respect and curiosity about what this unassuming woman might accomplish. Sarah Martinez was no longer invisible, and she planned to make the most of her newfound visibility. Monday morning found Sarah sitting outside Colonel Winters' office, her dress uniform crisp and her boots polished to mirror shine. She had arrived 15 minutes early, as her grandfather had taught her, and spent the time reviewing everything she knew about the colonel's distinguished career. Come in, Martinez. The colonel called from behind the heavy oak door. Sarah entered to find Colonel Winters reviewing a thick file folder, her expression serious. The office walls displayed photographs from deployments around the world, commendation ribbons in frames, and a single rifle mounted above the desk, a customized M24 that had clearly seen combat use. Have a seat, Colonel Winters said, closing the folder and leaning back in her chair. I've been reviewing your performance evaluations from sniper school. Exceptional doesn't begin to cover it. Thank you, ma'am. The question is, what do we do with you now? The colonel stood and moved to the window overlooking the training ranges. You've qualified as a sniper, but you're still technically a maintenance technician. That's a problem I need to solve. Sarah remained quiet, sensing that the colonel was working through something important. I'm going to be direct with you, Martinez. The special operations community is facing some challenges. We're losing experienced snipers to civilian careers, retirement, and medical issues faster than we can train replacements. At the same time, the standards expected of military snipers continue to increase. The enemies we face today are more sophisticated, the shots are more challenging, and the margin for error keeps shrinking. Colonel Winters turned back to Sarah. Traditional training methods aren't keeping pace. We need innovative approaches, fresh perspectives, and, frankly, we need instructors who can demonstrate excellence rather than just talk about it. Does that interest you? Sarah felt her pulse quicken. Yes, ma'am, it does. Good. Because I'm creating a new position, Advanced Sniper Training Coordinator. You would be responsible for developing and implementing new training protocols, working with our most promising candidates, and serving as a liaison between the various sniper programs across different branches. It's a promotion to staff sergeant, with the potential for rapid advancement based on performance. The offer was beyond anything Sarah had imagined possible 6 months ago. But something in the colonel's tone suggested there was more to this opportunity. There's a catch, isn't there, ma'am? Colonel Winters smiled, the first time Sarah had seen her display genuine amusement. You're perceptive. Yes, there's a catch. The position requires you to prove yourself in ways that go beyond what you've already accomplished. You'll be working with seasoned operators who don't know you, don't trust you, and, in many cases, don't think you belong there. You'll face scrutiny that male instructors never experience, and you'll need to be not just good, but undeniably excellent. I understand, ma'am. Do you? Because your first assignment is going to test every skill you possess. The colonel opened another folder and slid a photograph across the desk. It showed a mountain range with steep, rocky terrain. 6 weeks from now, we're hosting an international sniper competition. Teams from 12 countries, including some of the world's best military and law enforcement snipers. The competition includes precision shooting, field craft, stalking exercises, and unknown distance challenges in some of the most difficult terrain in North America. Sarah studied the photograph, noting the elevation changes, the sparse vegetation, and the complex wind patterns that the mountain terrain would create. It looked like the kind of place where shooting skills alone wouldn't be enough. Tactical intelligence and adaptability would be crucial. Our team has won this competition 3 of the last 5 years, Colonel Winters continued. This year, we have a problem. Our top 2 snipers are deployed overseas, and our third-string team finished dead last in the preliminary trials. We need fresh talent, and we need it fast. You want me to compete? I want you to lead the team. You'll have 2 weeks to evaluate the available candidates, select your teammates, and develop a training program that can compete with the world's best snipers. No pressure. The weight of the responsibility settled on Sarah's shoulders like a heavy pack. Leading a team was entirely different from individual performance. It required leadership skills she wasn't sure she possessed, tactical planning experience she had only theoretical knowledge of, and the ability to work with operators who might resent her authority. Ma'am, I'm honored by your confidence, but I've never led a team before. Wouldn't it be better to put someone with command experience in charge? Under normal circumstances, yes. But these aren't normal circumstances. Colonel Winters leaned forward, her expression intense. Every experienced leader I could assign to this position comes with preconceptions about how things should be done. You don't have those limitations. You see solutions where others see problems. That's exactly what this team needs. Sarah took a deep breath. When do I start? Today. Your first task is to review the files of every sniper currently stationed at this base and identify potential team members. You'll have access to training records, performance evaluations, and psychological profiles. Choose carefully. You'll only get 3 shots at this, literally. The next 2 weeks blurred together in a haze of file reviews, interviews, and practical assessments. Sarah discovered that building a team was infinitely more complex than individual training. Each potential team member brought their own strengths, weaknesses, and personality quirks that had to be considered not just individually but as part of a group dynamic. Her first choice was obvious: Petty Officer Chun, the young SEAL who had struggled in Morrison's classes but showed tremendous potential. Sarah had watched him during her maintenance days and recognized that his problems weren't with ability but with confidence and technique refinement. He needed mentoring, not criticism. The second choice was more controversial: Marine Gunnery Sergeant Lisa Park, a combat veteran with 2 deployments and a reputation for aggressive tactics. Park was technically skilled but had personality conflicts with several instructors. Sarah sensed that Park's aggression masked a perfectionist's frustration with mediocrity around her. For the third team member, Sarah chose someone who surprised everyone: Air Force Technical Sergeant David Kim, a former aircraft mechanic who had cross-trained to security forces and shown exceptional marksmanship ability. Like Sarah, Kim had technical background that gave him insights into equipment and ballistics that pure combat operators sometimes lacked. The team's first training session was held at dawn on a Monday morning. Sarah had chosen Range 12, the most challenging facility on the base, with targets from 200 to 1,200 yards and wind patterns that changed hourly. She wanted to establish baseline performance levels and begin building team cohesion. Before we start shooting, Sarah announced, I want to establish some ground rules. First, rank doesn't matter here. I don't care if you're a gunny, a petty officer, or a tech sergeant. What matters is performance and teamwork. Second, we're going to train harder than any of you have ever trained before. The international competition is 6 weeks away, and our opponents have been preparing for months. We need to be perfect from day one. Park raised her hand. What's your background, Sergeant Martinez? I mean, no offense, but leading a team to international competition is a big responsibility. It was a fair question, and Sarah had expected it. Valid concern, Gunny. My background is maintenance and individual marksmanship training. I've never led a competitive team before, but I've studied every aspect of this competition for the last 2 weeks. I know our opponent's strengths and weaknesses, and I have ideas about training approaches that haven't been tried before. Give me 2 weeks to prove myself. If you don't think I can lead this team effectively, I'll step aside. Chin spoke up. What kind of training approaches? Sarah walked to a table covered with equipment that the others didn't recognize. Traditional sniper training focuses on perfect conditions, known distances, controlled environments, predictable wind patterns. Real-world shooting rarely offers those luxuries. We're going to train in conditions that are deliberately more difficult than anything we'll face in competition. She unveiled her first innovation, a shooting simulator that could recreate the ballistic effects of various altitudes, temperatures, and atmospheric conditions without actually traveling to different locations. This system allows us to practice shots that simulate the competition venue's conditions. We can train for 8,000-foot elevation while standing at sea level. The second innovation was more controversial, stress inoculation training that combined physical exhaustion, time pressure, and psychological distractions during precision shooting. The competition includes scenarios designed to test performance under pressure. We're going to make sure pressure improves your performance instead of degrading it. Over the following days, Sarah pushed her team through training regimens that challenged everything they thought they knew about sniper work. They practiced shooting after running obstacle courses, made precision shots while instructors yelled contradictory commands, and engaged targets under time limits that seemed impossible. Initially, the team's performance was inconsistent. Chin's confidence issues resurfaced under pressure. Park's aggression led to rushed shots and missed targets, and Kim struggled with the leadership dynamics. Sarah found herself working as much as a psychologist as a marksmanship instructor, helping each team member overcome their individual barriers to peak performance. The breakthrough came during the 3rd week of training. Sarah had designed a complex scenario that required the team to work together to engage multiple targets simultaneously at different ranges. Success required not just individual accuracy, but precise timing and communication. On their 5th attempt at the scenario, everything clicked. Chin's shots were calm and precise, Park's aggression was channeled into focused intensity, and Kim's technical expertise provided the ballistic calculations that made long-range hits possible. They completed the scenario faster and more accurately than any team in the base's history. That felt different, Chun said as they reviewed the exercise results. That's what teamwork feels like, Sarah replied. Individual excellence combined with perfect coordination. That's what we need to take to the competition. Word of the team's progress began to reach other parts of the base. Colonel Winters made several unannounced visits to observe training sessions, each time leaving with a satisfied expression. Even Morrison, who had initially been skeptical of Sarah's leadership appointment, began sending other instructors to observe her innovative training methods. But the real test came when Sarah announced that she wanted to demonstrate something to the entire sniper instructor cadre. She had arranged for a special training session that would showcase not just her team's abilities, but the effectiveness of her teaching methods. The demonstration was scheduled for Friday afternoon, with every sniper instructor on the base in attendance. Sarah had designed a scenario that would test precision shooting, team coordination, and tactical problem-solving under pressure. It was ambitious to the point of being potentially embarrassing if her team failed to perform. As the instructors assembled at the observation area, Sarah felt the familiar flutter of pre-performance nerves. But when she looked at her team, Chun checking his equipment with quiet confidence, Park reviewing wind calculations with focused intensity, Kim performing pre-shooting meditation techniques, she felt a surge of confidence in their preparation. Gentlemen, Colonel Winters announced to the assembled instructors, Sergeant Martinez and her team are going to demonstrate some new training techniques they've developed for the international competition. I think you'll find their approach educational. Sarah stepped forward to address the group. What you're about to see is the result of 4 weeks of intensive training using non-traditional methods. Our scenario requires precision shooting at multiple unknown distances, team coordination under time pressure, and tactical problem-solving in real time. The team has 30 minutes to complete objectives that typically require an hour under ideal conditions. The scenario began with the team having to locate and identify targets hidden throughout a complex range setup. Some targets were visible only from specific angles. Others required coordinated simultaneous engagement, and all shots had to be made while moving between positions under time pressure. Sarah's team moved through the course like a precision instrument. Chen's confidence was evident in every shot. Park's intensity translated into flawless execution, and Kim's technical expertise provided the rapid calculations needed for difficult angles and distances. They completed the scenario in 22 minutes with 100% accuracy. The silence from the observing instructors was deafening. Then, Chief Ramirez started to clap, followed by others, until the entire group was applauding the performance they had just witnessed. Morrison approached Sarah as the demonstration concluded. "I've been teaching snipers for 8 years," he said, "and I've never seen a team perform like that." "How did you do it?" "I treated them like the professionals they are," Sarah replied. "I identified their individual strengths, helped them overcome their weaknesses, and gave them training challenges that made competition scenarios seem easy by comparison. Most importantly, I taught them to trust each other." Colonel Winters joined the conversation. "Martinez, what you've accomplished here goes beyond preparing a competition team. You've developed training innovations that could revolutionize how we prepare military snipers. I want you to document everything you've done and prepare a presentation for the Special Operations Command. They need to see this." As the crowd dispersed, Sarah realized that her grandfather's lessons had come full circle. He had taught her that shooting was about more than technical skill. It was about patience, observation, and seeing what others missed. Today, she had applied those same principles to teaching and leadership, with results that exceeded even her own expectations. The international competition was still 2 weeks away, but Sarah was no longer worried about her team's performance. They were ready. More importantly, she had discovered a talent for teaching and leading that she never knew she possessed. The quiet sniper had found her voice, and the entire special operations community was listening. That evening, Sarah sat in her apartment cleaning her grandfather's rifle, as had become her tradition after significant achievements. But tonight felt different. She wasn't just honoring his memory. She was continuing his legacy in ways he never could have imagined. Colonel Winters had been right about the scrutiny and challenges she would face. But what the colonel hadn't anticipated was how those challenges would forge Sarah into not just an exceptional sniper, but an exceptional leader whose innovations would influence military training for years to come. The laughing had definitely stopped. In its place was something far more valuable: respect, recognition, and the opportunity to shape the future of military sniper training. Sarah Martinez was no longer just the quiet sniper. She was the sniper who had changed everything.